He was looked down on for appearing weak, but he shocks everyone when they find out he's actually the master of the strongest hunter clan. Hey warriors, how is it going? You see me, I am Itachi Uchiha, the hidden Hokage of Leaf Village. Just kidding, you know I am just an AI, but behind this shape, I am here to entertain you with enormous amazing recaps of all animes you can imagine. So without talking too much, let's dive in our story.
Wake up to reality. Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world.
The story begins with a group of kids as they dream of becoming treasure hunters. We learn that treasure hunters explore ruins known as vaults to obtain the riches and relics hidden inside, but they risk their lives fighting against monsters known as phantoms. We meet a boy named Cry as he heads to an interview where the strongest clan is recruiting new members. As he waits in line, a girl named Ruda introduces herself, and she notes that she has always been a solo hunter, but after having trouble with a vault called the White Wolf's Den, she decided to try and join a party. A hunter named Greg overhears them and tells her there's no way she can take on the den as a level 3 hunter. He calls her an amateur, saying she won't be able to join the first steps since it's one of the leading clans in the capital, which makes her angry, and she notes that there aren't any requirements to join the clan. She takes out her daggers and prepares to fight, but a man tells them to stop, saying if they continue to cause a disturbance, then they won't be recruited. After that, Ruda is surprised to see so many hunters since she has never been to such a place, but Cry notes it's his 5th time. We learn that the clan is made up of a number of different parties, and Cry mentions that the Arc Brave party are the strongest ones there, saying that their 6 members were able to conquer a level 7 treasure vault. He notes that if their leader, Arc, accepts a hunter into their party, they are guaranteed to be successful, but he mentions that they haven't accepted a new member through one of these interviews. Ruda sees an empty table and asks Cry about it, but Greg interrupts once again, saying it's for the founder of the first steps. He calls it the Griever table, and Cry thinks about how the Griever came to the capital a few years ago, but they quickly rose to power, becoming one of the most famous parties, with their official name being the Grieving Souls, and it's the party of his childhood friends. Greg notes that it's the first time the Grievers are recruiting new members in years, which is why so many hunters have gathered. A boy named Gilbert suddenly starts yelling, demanding to know where the Griever are, revealing that he's already at level 4, but a girl named Tino interrupts him, saying he isn't needed there. She prepares to teach him a lesson, saying that she's the one who should be in the Grieving Souls, but a man stops her since their orders are to settle things peacefully, but everyone gathers around and clears the area to see them fight. Cry tells them they should go outside, not wanting to get caught up in the fight, and they start sneaking away as the fight is about to begin. Gilbert charges up his sword, but Tino notices Cry and she rushes to him instead. She calls him Master, and we learn that he's the leader of the Grieving Souls and the master of the first steps. We go back to when Cry and his friends first arrived in the capital, where they completed the beginner vaults in record time. We see Cry about to be eaten by a monster, but he's saved by his friend, and they praise him for acting as bait. But in reality, he had no idea there was a monster behind him. All of them dreamed of becoming treasure hunters, but compared to his 5 friends, who were insanely talented, he thinks he's just ordinary, and he knows that if he keeps following them, he will just be a burden to them. He thinks his friends are too kind to tell him he's weak, so he decides to leave the party, but when he tells them about his decision, they tell him to become their leader instead. Cry tells Arc he was late because he overslept, but Arc thinks he's joking, and Tino doesn't seem to like him. Arc thinks Cry was blending in with the hunters to assess them, but Cry notes that he really just overslept. Tino thinks Cry should kick out Arc from the clan because he's rude, and Arc asks Cry if he has found any good candidates. Cry thinks he already has enough members, but he asks Arc if he's willing to take on a new hunter. Arc mentions he trusts his judgment, saying he will take anyone that Cry picks, but it makes a girl from his party angry. Tino thinks Cry is going to recommend her, so she notes that she would rather stay with him. Gilbert causes another scene, and Cry asks him if he's with another party, but he notes it doesn't matter. He thinks Gilbert won't be an asset to him in his current state, but he might become strong if Arc's party trains him. Cry knows he has no eye for a person's talent, which means no matter who he chooses, it's all based on luck. He mentions the most important thing for a hunter is to never give up, and he tells Gilbert to show them his strength, because if he's weak, he'll put everyone around him in danger. Cry reveals after he became a hunter, he hasn't lost a fight, which shocks Gilbert, but it's really just because he hasn't had a proper fight. He takes off his ring, telling everyone that the person who retrieves it will be recommended to Ark, and as he throws the ring towards the hunters, Gilbert catches it, but Tino instantly kicks him and sends him flying. The hunters start fighting for the ring, and Cry mentions it's a relic, so he'll give the ring to the person who manages to collect it. The next day, the vice master of the first steps, named Ava, tells Cry he made the front page of the newspaper because of the fight that happened over the ring. He wonders if any civilians were hurt, so she tells him no, but mentions that they did get a call from the Explorers Association. He asks her what Ark thought of the news article, and she mentions he just laughed while reading it, so Cry tells her to charge the repair bill to him. Eva notes that he relies too much on Ark, and she tells him that the Explorers Association asked him to visit, so he knows if he neglects the matter, the chief will visit them instead. He mentions he can't go out since he doesn't have a bodyguard, and even his face-transforming relic is broken, but Eva tells him he won't be attacked during the day. Cry goes to the Explorers Association, where he instantly begs the chief, Gark, to forgive him, and the girl beside them calms him down. She gives him a book, and Gark mentions that even though a report about the trouble he caused wasn't filed, a clan as big as the First Step should be an example for the other hunters. Cry knows that the association receives a lot of requests, but some of them have low rewards or are extremely difficult, which makes it so that no one will accept them, and the hunters consider these requests as chores. Cry realizes Gark wants him to accept one of the missions, so he decides to do it since he owes Gark, but he mentions he didn't do anything that bad. Gark allows him to choose a mission of his liking, so Cry goes through the book and selects a level 3 request, thinking it looks like an easy rescue mission. But after he leaves, Gark is impressed, thinking he chose the most dangerous job on purpose. Cry goes to find Ark so he can give him the mission, but Tino reveals he was called away, and all the other members are also busy. She shows that she ended up with his ring, and she's happy she can keep it. Cry asks her if she's free, which makes her happy since she thinks he wants to spend time with her, but when he tells her about the mission, she instantly runs away. Cry summons a creature from his chain, which retrieves her, and she mentions she thought they were going to have fun together, but he's forcing her to do a chore instead. She mentions that she's only level 4, so she can't rescue 5 people on her own, but she gets even more angry as Cry tells Gilbert and the others to accompany her. We go back 6 years to when Cry and his friends first arrived at the association to register as a party, but Cry is scared to go inside. He thinks he will just hold everyone back, so they should just leave, but his friend Luke kicks the door open, announcing that he's the strongest swordsman in the world. He notes how Cry always told him that a true warrior doesn't need a weapon, which is why he uses a wooden sword to fight. The receptionist tells Cry to select a party name and symbol, but they haven't thought about it, so the receptionist notes that the name will reflect the spirit of their party, telling them to choose wisely. Cry decides to use the opportunity to show everyone how bad of a leader he is, so he chooses the name Grieving Souls, which everyone doesn't like since they're supposed to be a hero party. But a name like the Grieving Souls will make them seem antisocial. Cry says he isn't cut out to be their leader, but they all change their minds and decide that they like it so that he doesn't leave them. Back in the present, Greg is still shocked that Cry is the clan master, and he realizes that Cry is a level 8 treasure hunter known as the Thousand Tricks. Gilbert refuses to believe Cry is the strongest hunter in the capital because he doesn't even look like he is. And Tino says she can't team up with Gilbert since he's all talk, but Cry thinks about how he's also just talk. Cry asks them if they're willing to help, but Gilbert refuses to listen to him since he doesn't acknowledge him. So Cry decides to leave him out. As Cry is about to leave, Gilbert tells him to fight him, saying that if he loses, he will join them because he refuses to follow someone weaker than him. But Cry tells him to fight Tino since she's their party's leader. Gilbert mentions he let his guard down when he fought her before, but he isn't gonna make the same mistake. And he tells Cry he'll fight him next after he defeats Tino. Cry reveals that Tino is also a level 4 hunter, and she notes that even though she's nothing compared to Cry, she still won't lose to Gilbert. She throws away her weapon so that she won't accidentally kill him, which worries Ruta. And Greg mentions if they fight head on, Tino won't stand a chance since she's a thief. Cry knows that even though their levels are the same, there's still a large gap in their skill, and Tino is more experienced in one-on-one fights. He thinks Gilbert's Purgatory Sword will decide the result of their fight, but Gilbert throws it away, saying he doesn't need a weapon to fight an unarmed girl. Tino notes that if she wins, Cry will get ice cream with her, and he can't resist after seeing the look on her face. As the fight begins, Tino rushes toward Gilbert, and even though he dodges her first attack, she still manages to kick him and send him flying. Gilbert refuses to give up and tries to punch her, but she puts him in a leg lock, saying she went easy on him. She decides to teach him a lesson so he won't disrespect Cry again, and she hits him in the back of the head, making him fall to the ground, surprising Greg and Ruta with how strong she is. Gilbert thinks about how, when he was young, he was stronger than everyone around him, and after going to the capital, he joined a party, and as he kept conquering the vaults, he thought he could never be defeated. Tino mentions that if he still wants to fight, he should use his sword, but when he refuses to pick it up, she tells him he shouldn't let his pride be the death of him, which makes him realize if they were fighting seriously, he would already be dead. Cry notes that Gilbert quit his old party because the skill gap was too wide, and Cry mentions he went through the same thing with his own party, but they didn't abandon each other. Cry knows his friends were the ones who didn't abandon him, and Gilbert is shocked that even though the Grieving Souls consists of the strongest hunters in the capital, they still show mercy. Cry kicks Gilbert's sword and activates its power, which shocks him that Cry can wield the sword because even he isn't able to summon such strong flames. Cry was able to do it without even holding it in his hands. We learn that the substance that is said to be the foundation of the world is called mana material, and it's present everywhere but invisible to the naked eye. Treasure vaults are places created from concentrated mana material, and the White Wolf's Den is the vault where Cry is sending Tino and the others. There was originally a wolf monster called the Silver Moon that lived there, but they were hunted to extinction, which caused a treasure vault to appear, along with the phantom of a full-blooded wolf. Cry finds the vault terrifying, but he thinks Tino and the others will be fine since they're at a similar level. Eva asks him about the Purgatory Sword, and he mentions it's such an easy relic to use that even Gilbert, who has no knowledge about how it works, can still use some of its power. And he wonders if Gilbert will sell him the sword, and even mentions he shouldn't waste money on it since he already has similar relics. But he notes that all relics are different. She tells him he should be careful with his spending, no matter how much money he gets from the Grievers. And Cry thinks about how everyone in the Grievers gets an equal amount of money they make from hunts, even if they didn't contribute. Cry sees that he forgot to charge his relic, so he goes to a girl who charges it for him, and the man with her tells him about a stray level 3 phantom that appeared on the Northern Highway, where it wiped out a caravan which was escorted by 3 level 3 guards. He mentions the phantom took the shape of a wolf, and it came from the White Wolf's Den, which worries Cry. But he tells himself that Tino and the others will be fine. They note that the phantoms are getting stronger, so there have been talks about changing their certification levels because another party went missing a few days ago that was led by a level 5 hunter named Rudolph. Cry reads the quest again, and he realizes he forgot to read the part where it mentions the people who need to be rescued are Rudolph and 5 other level 5 hunters, and the others are shocked when Cry mentions he sent Tino to the Wolf's Den. After he leaves, he thinks they'll be fine as long as Gilbert has his Purgatory Sword, but he becomes worried because he doesn't know if Gilbert charged the sword after he used it. Meanwhile, Tino tells the others that the quest won't be easy since it was given to them by Cry, so it's why she wrote her will before she left. They all think Cry must have selected them for a reason, but he really just picked them all randomly. Cry thinks they can just come back if things get out of control, but he knows Tino won't retreat no matter the situation, so he decides to catch up to them before they reach the vault, and he plans to tell Ark to complete the quest once they return. He opens a secret room and he packs as many relics as he can, looking at a particular safe as he prepares to leave. Eva sees him trying to go out. She knows he's worried about the others, and she's surprised to see he took the Citry Slime relic, but he assures her he isn't stupid enough to have something that's illegal. But he thinks about how all his offensive relics are out of mana, so he needs to bring it as a last resort. He uses another relic to fly out, and Eva worries about him since it's ridiculously hard to control. Meanwhile, Tino and the others are attacked by a phantom, and they're shocked because it's wearing armor and has a sword, but Tino is determined to meet Cry's expectations of her. We go back to when the grieving souls first started working in the capital, and Luke is surprised that his sword broke against a phantom. As they talk about how they defeated a Cyclops, a drunk man overhears them, and he thinks they must be making up a story because there's no way a level 4 phantom would appear in a level 1 vault. But he's shocked when they show him the Cyclops' eye. Back in the present, Tino and the others managed to defeat the wolf, but they're surprised there was such a strong phantom in a level 3 vault. Greg asks Gilbert why he didn't use his flames during the fight, so he mentions the sword is out of mana, realizing it's because Cry used it. Ruta thinks they should retreat, and Greg notes the people they're tasked with rescuing must be dead already. But Tino refuses to change the plan, saying the people are still alive. She thinks everything is happening just as Cry predicted, and she tells Gilbert that Cry purposely made his sword run out of mana so he would realize he shouldn't depend on a relic. They come across a group of wolves, and Gilbert decides to take the lead, saying if he can get rid of the ones with the bows and guns, they can easily defeat the rest. Tino calls him stupid, but he mentions that even without mana, his sword is stronger than a normal one. But she tells him Cry trusted her as the leader, so she will make sure everyone survives. She notes that she and Ruta will attract the wolves, telling Greg and Gilbert to use the opportunity to attack them from behind. She mentions that she'll never use anyone to protect herself, but we see Cry wishing for at least her to survive, even if she has to use the other members as a shield. They manage to defeat the wolves, and Tino knows that even though their opponents are much stronger, they still have an advantage since they can rely on teamwork while the wolves have no concept of working together. She thinks about how even though their party was made on the spot, they still work well together. And she thinks it was all planned by Cry. They're attacked by more wolves, and while fighting them, Gilbert remembers the time he left his old party. But he realizes they were doing the best that they could, and he never considered their feelings. Gilbert slashes the wolf with the help of Greg, and he's happy to finally have strong allies. As they move forward, Tino senses the boss, and Greg wonders if they should retreat. But Tino notes that they have managed to make it so far without getting hurt, so she thinks they'll figure something out against the boss. She tells him they need to take risks sometimes, but he notes that once a hunter reaches level 4, they can live an easy life by conquering low-level vaults, and he avoids fights he can't win because he has seen his comrades die. Tino mentions how Greg has been a hunter for a long time, but he still came to join the first steps, so it must be because he wants to achieve something, and she thinks it's the reason why Cry selected him. She tells Greg and Gilbert that the mission is Cry's way of helping them, but Ruta wonders why she was selected, and Tino wonders if it was because of her chest. They come across the boss, and Tino sees that it isn't wearing a helmet, so she thinks it must be its weak point. She tells everyone to stop its movements, and they rush towards it, but it sends Greg flying and breaks his sword. As it's about to hit him with its axe, Ruta pushes him out of the way, and Tino prepares to attack. She jumps up in the air, and even though the wolf hits her leg, she still defeats it by stabbing its neck. Tino uses a potion to heal her leg, and Greg is surprised his sword broke during the fight, but Gilbert mentions they should be happy that they survived. Tino gives Greg another sword, but 4 more wolves suddenly appear and attack them, which shocks them since there's more than one boss in the vault. They have no idea what to do, and Tino shows them the path they can use to escape, but it gets blocked by one of the wolves. Gilbert and Greg decide to stay back to act as decoys so Tino and Ruta can escape, but Tino refuses to sacrifice anyone. She tells them to attack the wolf's eyes, so Gilbert rushes toward one of them, and as he blocks its attack, Greg stabs its leg with his sword, but it blows them away. Ruta throws her knives at its eyes, and Tino remembers when Cry taught her how to use his ring relic. She uses it to blind the wolf, and Gilbert uses the opportunity to finish it off, but it sends him flying into a wall. He apologizes to Tino for attacking without thinking, but she says it's her fault because her instructions weren't clear. The wolves are about to attack them, and they think it's all over. But Cry suddenly crashes in, smashing one of the wolves into a wall. The wolf gets back up and tries to attack him, but it's shocked to see there's a shield protecting him. Cry uses his ring to fire a huge blast, and Greg is amazed at the power of a level 8 hunter. But everyone is surprised when the wolf is completely fine, and Cry knows that his shooting rings aren't that powerful. He's confused after seeing that the wolves have weapons, and he just wants to get away safely, so he prepares to use Citri's slime, which scares the wolves, but the vial is empty, so he creates a smokescreen as a distraction, and he tells everyone to run away. As they run, Ruta notes how Cry seems to be slow, but she thinks he's just matching their pace since Tino is injured, but he's really just bad at running. Tino also thinks he's doing it on purpose to protect her, and she remembers the first time they met. She was about to be kidnapped by some men, but the grieving soul saved her just in time, and ever since that day, she has always admired them. The group manages to escape the wolves, and Ruta tells Cry if it weren't for Tino, they wouldn't have survived, but he apologizes for sending them on such a dangerous mission. He uses a relic to heal Tino, and he tells everyone to think of a way to get out of the vault instead of thinking about finding the bosses, but he gets worried since he has no idea where to go. We go back to the past when Cry shows all the relics he bought to his friends, which impresses everyone, and his friend Liz asks him to pick one out for her, but Luke says it's not fair and tells him he should choose one for all of them. Citri shows interest in a bag, and Cry notes it's a magic bag that can store an unlimited number of items, so she thinks it must have cost a lot, but he reveals it was actually cheap because it only holds chocolates. Liz tries a bracelet, but she suddenly falls over, and Cry mentions it's a labyrinth ring, which messes up her sense of balance. Luke tries out a cool sword, but he starts to lose his mind, and Cry mentions that it's cursed. So they realize that all the relics are trash, but they take them as training items. Back in the present, Cry wonders why he's leading even though he has no clue where to go. He thinks Tino or Ruta should take his place since they're thieves, and Gilbert asks him if they're headed for the exit, but Tino tells him it's a part of his training to read Cry's intentions, and she notes that they are heading toward the exit, which shocks everyone. She mentions that based on the map she saw before they left, she has a rough idea of the layout of the vault, so she knows the path that they are on doesn't lead to the exit, and she says that they need to return to the boss room if they want to leave. As they move forward, Ruta notes that even though she knows Cry is testing them, she still asks him where he's taking them, but he doesn't have any idea, and he wonders why they're all following him. As he thinks about turning back, everyone rushes ahead, and Tino mentions it's why they should have trusted him. He wonders what she means, and he's surprised that they managed to find Rudolph's party, who thanks everyone for rescuing them, but Tino notes he should thank Cry since he was the one who led them there. Ruta mentions she has given them potions, but they're still losing energy and they need to eat, so Cry uses his magic bag to give everyone chocolate. Greg notes that when he heard a party of level 5 hunters went missing, he thought it must have been a mistake, and Rudolph mentions they weren't expecting the enemy to be so strong, but Gilbert is confused because even though the wolves were strong, he doesn't think they would have been a problem for a group of level 5 hunters. But Rudolph reveals they were attacked by only one phantom, and it had a skull for a face. Everyone is shocked hearing this, and he mentions the phantom is probably the curse of the silver moon that lingers in the vault. He thinks that the grudge of the monsters that were slain by humans was amplified within the vault, which is what gave them power, but he notes that the phantom that attacked them was on another level, and he thinks it might even be as strong as the Thousand Swords. Cry thinks about how Luke is known as the Thousand Swords since he mastered all the forms of swordsmanship, and he's so strong that he can cut down his enemies with a wooden sword. He knows the phantoms are strong, but he doesn't think they could be on par with Luke, because if such a phantom existed, Luke would have already defeated it. Ruta asks Cry what they should do next, and he says they should get out of the vault, but he notes that he made Tino the leader of the mission, so they'll do whatever she decides, saying it's part of her training, but he's really just scared of leading everyone. Tino agrees that they should leave the vault, and she mentions her leg is completely healed, so she can run at full speed, but Cry reminds her to keep the others in mind, but he's just worried about himself since he can't run as fast as her. They're about to reach the exit, and Rudolph notes if the phantom attacks them, he will hold it off so everyone can escape, but Tino refuses to abandon him. She notes that as long as Cry is with them, everyone will be safe, but Cry knows he can only carry Tino and run away if something happens. He sees he has only 5 safety rings left, so he'll be in danger if he gets hit more than 5 times. He doesn't have any other relics to use, which makes him realize it will be over for him if they're attacked. They hear the wolves howling, and the Phantom suddenly appears in front of them, which scares everyone, but they're even more shocked when they see that there's a second one, but the one behind suddenly kicks the other one, sending him flying into the wall, and Cry realizes that it's Liz. He tells her to remove her mask, and everyone is relieved that she's a human, wondering who she is. But she gets angry that they don't know her, even though they're with Cry. She mentions she went to the capital to meet him, but Ava told her he had gone to the wolf den. She gets angry at Tino because she knows she's her disciple, and she couldn't defeat such a weak Phantom. Gilbert tries to interrupt them, but Liz sends him flying, and she turns back to Tino, who falls to her knees. Liz starts yelling at her, asking her why she's so weak, and Tino apologizes to her. But Cry tells her she did a good job because she completed the mission, so he tells Liz to go easy on her. The Phantom gets back up, and it summons one of the wolves that has a Gatling gun. Liz gets mad she's being underestimated because of how weak Tino was, and the wolf starts to shoot its gun at her, but she uses her insane speed to catch them out of the air, arranging them all around her. She notes that she can't be hit by weapons of the old, and she yells at Tino, calling her incompetent for being scared of such a weak weapon. But she jumps into the air, saying the wolf can be defeated if it's attacked from above, and she blows it up in a single hit. The Phantom tries to attack with its sword, but she catches it with her hand. She starts to beat it to a pulp while she continues to yell at Tino, which makes her tear up, and Cry feels bad for her. He smiles as he thinks about how Rudolph said the Phantom was as strong as Luke, and he knows that besides him, all the Grievers are insanely strong because they've hardened their skills by competing against each other. They all return to the capital, and Gilbert mentions that he will give his sword to Cry because he plans to start his training from the beginning and train with his old party. Greg tells him to apologize to them for his past behavior, and he mentions he's indebted to all of them, asking them to give his gratitude to Cry. He hopes to be able to catch bullets like Liz, but they tell him it's impossible for him, and Tino mentions that if he really wants to be like her, then he should know that their masks are specially made. We go back to when Cry ordered the masks for the party, but he messed it up and forgot to get holes for their eyes, but everyone goes along with it, thinking he did it on purpose because if they can get around while having it on, they will become even stronger. Back in the present, Cry searches everywhere for the slime, but he can't find it anywhere, so he tries to just forget about it. We go back a year to when Citri gave Cry the slime to hold on to, and we learn she's the party's genius alchemist. Cry tries to open the vial, but Citri tells him to be careful because it might destroy the capital if it's released, so Cry realizes how dangerous it is. Cry looks around everywhere for the slime as he notes that when he tried to use it in the den, the vial was empty, so he thinks it must still be in his room. He remembers how he put it into his special safe, so it's impossible for it to have gotten away. He concludes that the vial was always empty, and he thinks Citri was just pranking him, but he still has a bad feeling. He wakes up tired the next day because he's still worried about the slime, and he runs into Ava, who tells him the association wants his report on the wolf den, but he notes that Tino was the leader, so they should ask her instead, but Ava mentions that Tino is busy training with Liz. Cry asks her if there has been any movement in the capital, still thinking about the slime, but she doesn't know what he's talking about, so he tells her not to worry and goes to check on Tino. After he leaves, Eva notes how there have been all sorts of anomalies going on in the capital, but Cry seems to be able to accurately predict the things that happen. Cry heads to the training room where he sees a level 6 hunter named Sven outside, and we learn he's the leader of the Obsidian Cross Party. He tells Cry he needs to stop Liz because Tino will die if they don't do something. Cry thinks he's exaggerating, but when he opens the door, he sees Liz standing over Tino's body, wondering if this is all she can do. Liz prepares to finish her off, but Cry interrupts her. Liz notes that Tino has more talent than her, but she wonders why she's so weak. Cry tells her to call it a day, but Tino suddenly grabs onto Liz, saying she can still move, so they decide to continue their training. Cry realizes there's no stopping them, and Sven mentions how the northern route has been locked down because there was an attack from multiple phantoms. Cry also remembers how things were strange at the Wolf's Den, so he wonders if it's why Gar wanted to see him. He wishes Ark was back so he can get him to do all the work, so he thinks he just needs to stall for time. He comes up with an idea and tells Sven to visit Gar in his place, saying he's too busy to go himself. As he leaves, Sven's companion Henrik wonders why Cry stays back while everyone else is out on missions. But Sven tells him he's new, calling Cry a monster, and he tells Henrik not to judge Cry by his laid-back appearance. Meanwhile, at the association, Gark wonders about the cause of the anomaly at the den, thinking Cry must know something because it's the only vault he has visited in a long time. We see a secret lab and we meet a mage named Noctis, but he can't believe such a high-level hunter like Cry has become suspicious of them, thinking they can't underestimate him, so he decides to call his right-hand Sophia to deal with him. We learn that the mages of the capital, Akashic Tower, are the ones behind the vault anomalies, and we learn they're tapping into the power flowing through the ley lines of the vault for research that will allow them to create their own vaults at will. We see Cry as he watches in terror as a giant slime sets fire and destroys the capital, but he wakes up and realizes it was just a nightmare. He finds Liz in his bed and she asks him if he's free, so he agrees to do something with her. We see Gark visiting the first steps, but when Liz sees him, she tells him to get lost, not wanting him to ruin her date with Cry. They start to fight, so Cry decides to talk to Gark's assistant, Kana. She asks him if he noticed anything strange from the den, but he mentions he was more worried about something else. She tries to ask him about it, but he knows he can't tell her about the slime, and he tells her to ask Ark for help with the anomalies. Meanwhile, Liz teases Gark for being rusty, telling him he fell off, so he decides to teach her a lesson. We learn he was a first-rate level 7 hunter, and he had the nickname of being the War Demon, but Cry interrupts their fight, telling Gark they're done with their business. So Liz gets ready to go out, and Eva freaks out seeing all the damage from the fight. Cry and Liz head out into the city, and we learn that Liz and the other grievers were at a level 8 vault called the Night Palace. She notes that the phantoms there were strong, so Cry asks her how they compared to the boss from the Wolf's Den, but she doesn't even remember it because it was so weak. Liz suddenly tackles a man, saying he was staring at them, but Cry gets her to let him go, and he apologizes to the man. The man quickly runs away, and Liz thinks Cry allowed it on purpose, thinking he's a good actor, but Cry is just confused. We see the man after he gets away, thinking Cry was giving him a warning, so he wonders how much Cry knows about their plan. Cry sends the obsidian cross to the association in his place, which makes Gark angry because he wanted to question Cry himself. But he knows the party is skilled, so he gives them the task of investigating the Wolf's Den. Meanwhile, Liz goes out with Cry again, but he tells her to calm down, reminding her that it's not a date. She asks him if he's looking for something, so he explains that Eva's report mentioned that people have been disappearing from the area, and even though such incidents aren't rare in these parts of the city, he thinks they need to take it seriously because Citri's slime might be involved. He also mentions Ava told him about a new ice cream shop nearby, so he wants to check it out, which makes Liz excited. We see the man from the other day watching them, and he starts freaking out, thinking Cry and Liz let him go before just so they could follow him. He notes that the ice cream shop is actually the secret research base for the Akashic Tower, so he thinks he needs to close the shop until Cry leaves. But Sophia suddenly arises. She sees him panicking and wonders what's wrong, but before he can respond, Liz knocks on the shop's door. When no one answers, she gets impatient and tries to break it down, but Cry stops her, suggesting the shop might have run out of stock. So he convinces her to leave, even though she mentions she can still smell something sweet inside. They return to the clan office, where Liz is annoyed they didn't get ice cream, but Cry is still just worried about the slime. He asks her if Citri has returned from the Night Palace, so Liz offers her help instead, since Citri won't be back for a while. But he mentions that he needs Citri's expertise on a certain magical creature. Eva arrives to tell him that she has chosen members for the investigation of the Wolf's Den, while Sven's team is already on site, but Ark isn't back yet. She mentions the investigation will begin tomorrow, and they're also sending a relic expert to check the vault. But Cry is just relieved he doesn't need to go, and he trusts her to manage it. Meanwhile, the Akashic Tower members have a meeting about how Cry has discovered their base in the capital. One of the mages, named Flick, suggests that they stay calm, but since Cry's true intentions are unclear, they aren't sure how to proceed. Noctis asks Sophia for her opinion, and she shocks everyone by suggesting they should fight, but Flick reminds her that Cry is level 8. Sophia still thinks they shouldn't back down because it's the perfect opportunity to test their defense system, and if they manage to wipe out Cry's party, there will be no one left to oppose them. Noctis likes her idea and tells her to do as she pleases, since Cry has already noticed them, so they can't expect to escape without a scratch. We see Tina walking through the city, and she's surprised to see so many hunters at the guild, but another hunter tells her they're collaborating with the association to investigate the Wolf's Den. Tino thinks there are way too many people, but the man mentions Cry wanted Ark to lead the mission, and since he's one of the top level 7 hunters in the world, all the hunters there are just to make up for him not being available. Cry arrives with Ava, and he's also surprised to see so many people. Ava explains that they're all replacements for Ark, and Cry worries about the cost of hiring everyone, so he suggests cutting the number in half, but the hunters worry about facing a threat serious enough to require Ark, which makes Cry wonder what's going on in the vault. Ava reassures him they can afford the extra hunters because Gark is helping pay, but he worries about sending them all since Citri's slime might be in the vault. Liz suddenly arrives and mocks them, claiming she can handle the job on her own, so she asks Cry to allow her to go, but he refuses because he worries she will cause trouble with the other groups there, and he knows she will drag Tino along with her, who still hasn't fully recovered from her training. Ava asks Cry if he will lead the mission himself, which makes the hunters happy, but he thinks Sven is better suited for the role, and he notes he still has an important task to finish, so he will join them later, but he really just plans to show up only when the mission is nearly complete. As the party prepares to leave, Liz insists on going, but Cry tricks her by saying he has an important task for her. Before the hunters leave, they ask if there's anything they should be cautious about, and Cry warns them to watch out for slime-like creatures, which surprises them since slimes don't usually appear in the Wolf's Den. Meanwhile, at the Akashic Tower base, Noctis learns that there are hunters approaching, which makes them worried, but Sophia believes they can handle it. She mentions that from the grieving souls, only Cry, Liz, and Citri are in the capital. She says they can easily deal with Liz by stopping her physical attacks, and Cry is a strategist, so he can't use his full abilities without another party member to guide. Noctis notes that the real threat is Citri, but Sophia tells him her defense system will restrict her alchemy techniques, making it impossible to penetrate, but she notes that Citri has been snooping around their research, so they must take her out. Noctis gives her full authority to do as she pleases, and he even orders his men to follow her every command. Meanwhile, in the den, Sven and his team notice everything seems normal, making Henrik wonder why they even accepted the quest, but Sven reminds him it was a direct order from Gark, so they didn't have a choice. Henrik complains they're just cleaning up after Cry's mess, but Sven tells them they will eventually understand how skilled Cry is. He receives a message about Cry's warning, so he gets Henrik to blow the emergency whistle, which makes all the other teams evacuate outside, but another hunter named Gain thinks he's wasting their time over a slime. But Sven defends Cry by explaining his ability to see the future, and he recalls the time when Cry advised them to bring weapons to a flower viewing party, which later turned out to be a vault called the Prism Garden. Gain is shocked hearing this, and Sven reveals he spent a lot on his communication stones, so he can always get the latest information. Meanwhile, Liz keeps bothering Cry, saying she wants to fight in front of him to show her true strength, but he tries to stall until the investigation is over. Citri suddenly arrives, and Liz wonders why she's back, but she notes that she had a bad feeling that something big was happening, so she came back to help Cry. We go back to their childhood where Citri tells Cry she needs to make up for what the others lack so they can continue enjoying life as hunters. She knows she isn't strong, but Cry suggests she take on a role that suits her best, which is how she became their alchemist. In the present, Citri explains to Cry how her slime evolved and improved, but she still considers it a failed experiment. She reassures him that he doesn't need to worry because she has programmed it so that it won't attack either of them. Citri wonders how it could have escaped Cry's safe, and after investigating, she thinks that the slime must have learned to open the vault on its own and it snuck out through the bath drain. She promises to take care of it, but she also mentions that if things continue the way they're going, the entire investigation team at the Wolves' Den will be wiped out. Sven learns that Cry and Liz won't be joining them until later, so he will need to lead everyone in their absence. He gathers all the hunters, and he asks if anyone has experience fighting slimes, but they laugh since they're considered weak. And one hunter even jokes that he might have killed a slime without even noticing. Sven asks them if anyone has brought tools to deal with slimes, so the group begins listing the various weaknesses of slimes and how they can easily defeat one. They're interrupted by Gain, who insists they resume exploring, and he mentions he isn't scared of a slime, so if one comes, he will deal with it himself. But everyone mocks him, saying he's the type who would die first. Sven even tells him to leave behind his personal information so they can avenge him after he dies, which makes him annoyed, and he dismisses their warnings, saying they're crazy for believing Cry, who didn't even show up. A girl named Talia introduces herself as an alchemist, which surprises Sven because he didn't think they had another alchemist besides Citri, so she reveals she worked in the clan's lab with Citri where they research slimes. They ask if she knows of any slime weaknesses, so she shows them a drug which should be able to kill any slime, putting everyone at ease. Meanwhile, Noctis contacts Sophia, who tells him they're up against less than 100 hunters, and most of them don't even have a title, so she thinks they will easily defeat them. Sven prepares an action plan, telling the hunters to secure the vault's interior as units and to use whistles for communication. He tells them to be careful and notes that those who aren't assigned to suppression should stay outside to assist with any rescues if necessary. After a while, reports come in that only a few wolf knights have been encountered, which makes Sven question Cry's ability to predict the future, but he notes they would be lucky if nothing happens. Gain complains they wasted too much time, while Henrik says that even though he doesn't know Cry well, he trusts in Sven's judgment. Gain goes into the forest, and he thinks if Ark had given the order, he would have trusted it, but with Cry sitting back in the capital, he doesn't feel the same. He suddenly hears a noise and assumes it's a wolf, but he's shocked to find two mages with a wolf knight that's chained up, and they have a suspicious looking syringe. They talk about how Sophia is their master's favorite, even though she can't use magic properly, but Gain rushes at them and he manages to take out one of them, while the other mage shoots fire at him, which he blocks using his shield. He knocks the mage out, but his arm still gets burned, and the mages wonder if it was Cry who sent him, but he denies it. Then they inject the wolf with mana material, transforming it into a giant slime creature. They explain it's a phantom that has been demonized to seek out high concentrations of mana, so it starts to attack Gain. The creature lets out a loud roar, drawing all the hunters to its location, where they find Gain, who's severely injured, and he confirms Cry was right about the slime. The creature soon appears, and Talia notes she has never seen such a big slime before. Sven notices its slow movement, and he tries to organize the hunters, ordering the mages to create a diversion. He orders everyone to attack its legs, but even his own arrows don't affect the monster. So he tells Henrik to help Gain, who mentions how the mages injected a wolf knight to turn it into a slime, just as Cry had predicted. Sven realizes both physical and magical attacks don't affect it, so one of the hunters asks him what they should do. Sven notes that even if they can't defeat it, they can't run away. He tells everyone to focus on dodging its attacks while he takes the drug from Talia, which she explains will cause the slime to self-destruct if the liquid touches the slime. Sven gets the slime's attention, and as it chases after him, it jumps high up into the air and surprises everyone, but Sven plants the container under where it will land. The slime bubbles up on contact, but it doesn't work, and Sven realizes it isn't a slime like Cry had predicted, but another hunter corrects him, saying Cry warned them about a creature that was slime-like. Citri arrives, explaining the creature has a magical barrier, and she notes Cry sent her because he thought things might become dangerous. this. She describes how the slime creates a strong force field that deflects arrows and counters magic, and she thinks they wouldn't encounter a phantom like this even in a level 8 vault. She notices the slime dissolving its own body to convert mana material into magical energy, so she explains it's trying to replenish itself by absorbing her mana, since she has the highest mana concentration among them all. She continues to dodge all its attacks and gets close to the creature, asking Sven for his help as she tosses another container toward the slime. So he shoots it with his arrow and the slime is instantly dissolved. Citri reveals the container had an anti-mana material, and Gark also arrives there wearing his armor, which surprises Sven. But Citri notes that Gark gave her a lift since she can't run like Liz. Meanwhile, at the Akashic Tower base, Noctis is shocked that Citri managed to defeat the demonized phantom so easily, and he remembers Sophia warning them about her abilities. Citri briefs the hunters on her investigation into the Akashic Tower and Noctis, explaining that they have been researching ways to manipulate vaults. They remind her that Noctis was banished from the capital, but she reveals she has done thorough research, and she notes the phantom they faced was most likely a product of the Akashic Tower's experiments. Talia thinks there must be an underground device involved, and Citri agrees because creating such monsters would require significant equipment. She worries that there may be more monsters like the one they defeated, and she admits she only had one stick of anti-mana, which she has already used. She notes that she isn't a good fighter, but she's determined to do her best and thinks that with everyone's help, they will be okay. Later on, Henrik praises Kitri in front of Sven, but he warns him to be cautious because he considers her a powerful weakling. He knows she's one of the grieving souls, so she'll do anything to survive, even if it means devouring him. Meanwhile, at the Akashic Tower base, the mages tell Flick that Sophia has ordered them to release the demonized phantoms one by one, but they believe it will only help the hunters defeat them more easily. Flick notes that Sophia is just a researcher, and she has no combat experience, so they try to contact her, but they can't reach her. He mentions that even though they're well prepared, if the one leading them is incompetent, it won't mean anything. The mages remind him that the master gave Sophia full authority, but he thinks what really matters is winning, so Flick orders them to release all the phantoms at once, thinking it will overwhelm their enemies. Meanwhile, on the surface, the hunters interrogate the captured mages and learn that a single injection can create a monster. Citri asks if they're working for Noctis, promising to guarantee their safety if they answer, but the mages refuse to betray their master, which confirms her suspicion about their connection to the Akashic Tower. She mentions that she knows how to make them talk and pulls out a tube, which the others recognize as a brainwashing potion, and they tell her to stop, saying that using such a potion is a war crime. So she drinks the liquid herself and explains that it was just colored water, but she really just has a resistance to it. The demonized phantoms soon arrive, and the captured mages try to scare the hunters. Sven asks Citri how they can defeat them, and she explains that the phantoms have several barriers, so they must figure out the attributes of the barriers to know how to break through them. Sven observes Citri's calmness, and he notices the phantom is much faster than the previous one they faced. Citri tells the shield bearers to stand at the front so they can check the direction of the phantom's force field, but she warns them to drop their shields as soon as they make contact. The phantom attacks, and one of the hunters loses his arm despite Citri's warning, so she tells the others to focus on the monster, but their attacks prove useless because the phantom's force field rotates, allowing it to dodge everything. She analyzes the situation and concludes the physical attacks, including Gark's axe, won't work, so he wonders if they should wait for the phantom's mana to run out, but Citri disagrees, saying it would take at least an hour, and Sven finally understands why Cry wanted Ark to handle the mission. As they debate on their next move, another phantom appears, making their escape seem impossible, but Citri suddenly gets an idea and notices a major flaw in the Akashic Tower's approach. She calls the mages back, ordering them to stop attacking, and to everyone's surprise, the phantoms start attacking each other instead of the hunters. Citri explains that the phantoms instinctively target humans to replenish their mana, but without hunters attacking them, the only other mana sources are the other phantoms themselves, because they are basically lumps of mana material. The hunters watch in amazement as the phantoms destroy one another, while the mages are unable to understand what went wrong. Meanwhile, at the Akashic Tower base, Noctis is furious with Flick and the others since they went against Sophia's orders. Sophia defends herself, saying that while she lacks battle experience, her orders are never without reason. Noctis tries to stay positive and points out that their fighting strength isn't limited to the Phantoms. He asks Sophia what they should do next, and she notes that Citri and Gark have also joined the Hunters, so the situation has changed. She thinks they can't afford to retreat, and she reminds them of the captured mages, worrying they might reveal information about the tower. Flick thinks the mages won't betray them, but Sophia believes Citri will still soon locate their base, so they'll need to unleash the Malice Eater to stop the Hunters. Noctis reminds her that the Malice Eater is still in training, and someone will need to control it, so Sophia tells Flick to take charge, saying it's his chance to prove his worth. Talia admires Citri for never giving up, thinking she's a true genius, but seeing her makes her feel jealous because she thinks she can never reach her level. Sven notices Talia deep in thought, and he asks if something is bothering her. He wonders if it's because her slime repellent failed, but she denies it, and he tries to cheer her up, saying Cry should have warned them it wasn't a regular slime. He also mentions how the mages keep staring at her, thinking it might be because of her red hair. Gark thinks they might need to retreat, but Citri surprises him by saying that she has found the location of the enemy base. She explains the exact spot where she believes they are hidden, based on the presence of mana and a number of other factors. She asks the mages if she's correct, so they lie and tell her she's wrong, but it only confirms her suspicion. They note that they must go on the offensive before Noctis escapes, but the mages tell them their master isn't there, and they call for Sophia to stop the Hunters. Sven wonders who Sophia is, so Citri mentions she's her arch nemesis, and she vows to capture both her and Noctis, saying that their research will continue unless they're stopped. She admits she failed to capture Sophia in the past due to her incompetence, but she swears to put her away the next time they meet. Meanwhile, Cry and the others approach the den, but he isn't happy because he had planned to arrive only after everything was over. Liz tells them to hurry, believing Citri might die without them, but Cry doubts it, thinking that the only one who might die is himself, since he hasn't charged his relics and doesn't have any safety rings. Tino mentions they have almost arrived, but it's too dark for Cry to see anything. Tino tries to use the chance to hold his hand, but Liz refuses to let her touch him. Meanwhile, Gain regrets not trusting Cry because if he had, he wouldn't have gotten so wrecked. Citri notes that Cry is a genius who might one day reach level 10, which makes Gain even more eager to meet him. Gain assumes Cry must be incredibly strong, but Citri explains that strength isn't everything, and even if Cry were weaker than a sand rabbit in combat, it still wouldn't matter. A bolt of lightning suddenly strikes them from the sky, and Flick appears, riding the Malice Eater. He thinks he has redeemed himself by taking them all out, but Citri is unharmed by the attack and dismisses his spell as basic magic, since she's used to that level of power when she's with the other grieving souls. She uses a water gun to shoot Sven with a healing potion, instantly reviving him. He gets up and charges at Flick, knocking him out, but the monster proves to be too powerful and he's almost killed. But Gark arrives just in time and kills the monster in one hit. Noctis is disappointed in Flick since he didn't follow the orders once again, noting he only took one Malice Eater when he was supposed to take more. His followers begin to lose hope, wondering if Cry planned everything from the start, so they consider deploying all their remaining Malice Eaters, but Noctis stops them, mentioning that they still have Sophia and their final trump card. We see that Citri and the others have made it outside the Akashic Tower base. Sven prepares to enter, but Gark volunteers to take the lead since he wants to prove Liz wrong about him being washed. Meanwhile, Cry's party observes the effects of Flick's lightning, and Liz notes that it was average. But Tino can't believe that she thinks that an attack on such a scale is only average. We see the Hunters going up against the Akashic Mages, but Noctis unleashes his trump card, an enormous golem named Akasha, and he calls it the culmination of all their research. Gark manages to block its attack, but the other hunters struggle against the Malice Eaters, and the captured mages escape during the chaos. Gain thinks they should retreat, but Sven gets hit, and things are looking bad. But one of the Malice Eaters is suddenly taken out as Liz suddenly appears, and the other hunters get fired up, seeing they have reinforcements. Meanwhile, we see Cry left with Tino, and he worries about losing Liz as his bodyguard. Tino senses something nearby, but Cry thinks they should just ignore it, but the mage is wondering what he's thinking since they think he should be aware of them. Liz takes out another Malice Eater, and she teases Citri for struggling against such weak creatures. She starts attacking the golem, but it's able to withstand her attacks. Gark swings his axe at it, but it jumps up to avoid it. Sven sees that it looks similar to the grieving soul Antom, and Liz wonders why the golem was modeled after him. She continues her attack, but the golem pulls out a gun and lands a blast on her. It starts chasing after her, and Citri thinks it's a bad matchup for Liz, so she thinks they need to just wait for the golem to run out of energy. But Liz insists on destroying it. She delivers another attack, kicking it down, and Gark freezes its leg, but it's able to stop itself from falling. Liz gets annoyed, noting that her time is up, and Sven wonders what she means. But Cry and Tino suddenly appear. She notes that she wanted to finish things before he arrived, and Citri realizes it's over. The golem starts to charge at him, but he can't actually see it in the dark. It prepares to attack him, but it suddenly gets blown away, and the fight appears to be over. Liz wonders what he did to it, but he doesn't even know what happened. After that, it seems the Akashic Tower mages were able to escape, but their research and materials are all confiscated. Citri thanks Cry for his help, and he wonders how things are going with her nemesis, but she thinks about handling it on her own. Meanwhile, the captured mages regroup with Noctis, and they tell him that Sophia has infiltrated the hunters. Noctis wonders about what she's thinking, but he struggles to read Cry's intentions, so he decides they can't risk it, so they need to just leave the capital, and he tells his men to call Sophia back. Meanwhile, at the association, Gark demands to know what Cry knows, but he swears that he knows nothing. He thinks they should talk to Citri since she was in charge of the mission, but the official is hesitant about questioning her. Eva notes that there was an incident 3 years ago where there was a mass prison breakout, and all the evidence pointed to Citri, but she got off thanks to Gark, who thought it was ridiculous for her to be involved. Talia is brought to Noctis, and he tells her to drop her act. He tells her they're leaving, but she has no idea what he's talking about. They wonder if she's using a spell to avoid suspicion, but they notice the Malice Eater is aggressive towards her, so they realize she's not Sophia. The real Sophia appears, and Noctis wonders why there's a girl that looks just like her, but she explains that she's the one who's the copy. She reveals herself to actually be Citri, and Noctis wonders what she's doing pretending to be Sophia, but she explains that Sophia never existed and it was always her from the beginning. Flick thinks she was planning to betray them, but she knows she became a disciple like all of them because she was drawn by Noctis's abilities. She mentions she respects his relentless dedication, and she's thankful for all the equipment and materials, but she thinks the jig is up, and she thinks Cry letting them go was his warning to her to stop what she's doing. Noctis thinks she must have leaked their research to Cry, but she mentions that he's just able to see through everything. She thinks he organized everything while she was away, sending high-level hunters to help test the fruits of her research. She reveals that she was the one who made the golem jump back because she thinks the battle would have led to too many casualties. She tells them all that they will all be captured as criminals, but she tells them not to worry since she will carry on their research. Flick orders the Malice Eater to attack her, but it doesn't work. So Noctis blasts her with his flames, but she emerges unharmed, and he can't believe his attack had no effect, but she reveals that her slime absorbed the blast. She gets excited to test it out, and the mages tell Noctis to run while they hold it back. We see him about to get away, but he gets pushed back by a cloaked figure. So he burns it with his flames, but it turns out to be a jacked monster. Noctis freaks out seeing it, and Citri notes that as the weakest member of the Grieving Souls, she had to quickly gain power. She mentions that creating a golem took too much time and resources, so she made a chimera instead. She reveals she was behind the mass prison break incident, mentioning it was all so she could get the parts she needed. She calls it Kill 'em, and Noctis thinks she's insane, but it ends up finishing him off. After that, Cry asks about what happened to Talia, but Citri knows she just had some memory loss. She thinks it's a shame how everything turned out, but Cry has no idea what she's talking about, so he just agrees with her. A meeting is held about the incident at the association, and Cry helps Citri ask for the golem and the Malice Eaters. The official wonders what he wants with a Malice Eater, but he mistakes it for a drink, which shocks everyone. After the meeting, Citri thanks Cry for his help, and we learn they were able to get a Malice Eater. Citri goes to collect it, and as Cry is about to go to the lobby, Gark interrupts him, saying he needs to talk. Gark tells him about a party called the Fallen Fog, who just arrived in the capital from the Land of Fog, and they're led by a man named Arnold Hale. Gark is surprised Cry doesn't know Arnold, so he tells him Arnold is a level 7 hunter who killed a thunder dragon, but Cry mentions that he's also a dragon slayer. Gark laughs and tells him not to cause any trouble, and as he just pats him on his back, it breaks one of his safety rings. Cry sees a poster for an auction he wants to attend, which is selling off some of the highest quality relics. But Cry notes that he doesn't have any money. He thinks about borrowing from Citri, but he remembers he hasn't even paid her back for the last time he took money from her. Gark's niece, named Chloe, asks Cry why Gark was in a good mood, but she's surprised when he tells her they were talking about Arnold. After Cry and Citri leave, Arnold arrives at the association and Chloe welcomes him, thinking he's new, but the people with him get scared seeing the way she's talking to him. Meanwhile, Citri shows the Malice Eater she got to Cry and Ava. Eva wonders if it's dangerous, but Citri knows she has trained it, so it won't hurt her or Cry. It jumps on Cry, but it breaks his safety rings as he plays with it, so he realizes it's too dangerous. He realizes he needs to recharge his relic, so he asks Citri when his sister Lucia will be back, but she notes it will be a while because a swordsman phantom appeared in the Night Palace boss room, so Lucia and the others will need to accompany Luke until he defeats it. Citri gives him a ring, which we learn is a relic that can store one spell from the user, and we see that he also has one from Lucia. Meanwhile, the Fallen Fog members are angry because Chloe didn't know who Arnold was. They refuse to be underestimated just because they're outsiders, and they decide to show everyone what they can do. Citri gives Cry a massage, and he notes that he needs to charge all his relics, but there's no one other than Lucia who has the mana to do it. So Citri tells him she will think of something. She gathers a group of hunters, telling them they're doing a special training in magic cultivation that Cry came up with. She tells them it will help them reach Lucia's level, and Sven is shocked to hear this. She asks them if any of them are willing to try it, and two members of the Starlight Party, named Chris and Lapis, agree to undergo the training. Chris gets angry at Cry because he didn't greet Lapis, but Lapis stops her, saying that even though Cry is a fool, he's still the clan master. We learn that the Starlight Party is a rare party composed of a subrace called Noble Spirits, who are known for their longevity and exceptional magic skills, but they look down on anyone who isn't an outstanding mage. Lapis notes that even the nobles consider Lucia extraordinary, so she doesn't think there's any training that can make them as strong as her, but Citri mentions Lucia became one of the most powerful mages because of the training. Another girl named Marriott also asks to participate, so Citri gives her one of Cry's rings to charge, but she's surprised by how much mana it needs. She manages to finish charging it, but she's shocked when Citri gives her another ring, and she mentions that the power of a mage is determined by their total mana, which stops increasing for most people in their early teens. Marriott suddenly passes out, and Citri mentions that when mana is overused, you enter a state of mana exhaustion, but she notes that during recovery from the condition, there's a chance to increase the upper limit of your mana. Sven thinks it's insane, and Chris mentions even for noble spirits, recovering mana takes time, so she doesn't think the method is efficient, but Citri gives Marriott some special juice, which makes her let out a scream, and Citri reveals that her mana has already increased, saying that by repeating the process, they can become stronger. Lapis wonders if Lucia really underwent such training, and Citri mentions that Lucia's power isn't due to talent, but because of her hard work. She knows that Starlight is trying to recruit Lucia, but she mentions Lucia hasn't joined them because of their attitude, where they think they are better than everyone else because of their natural talent. Chris gets angry, so she tells Citri to give her all the relics, saying she will charge them all, and as she starts doing it, the other hunters join her as well. Meanwhile, Ark gets an offer to work for a man named Sandrine, but he notes that he still has a lot to learn from Cry. Sandrine asks him if he has met with Lord Gladys, saying his daughter Claire is looking for him and she appears behind them. Cry and Citri go to meet Liz, and Tino notes that she's taking a shower. Liz comes out naked, so Citri quickly covers Cry's eyes, telling her to put on some clothes. Liz wonders if Cry needs something, and he tells her he's thinking of celebrating their safe return, which makes her excited, and she goes to hug him, but Citri holds her back. They go to a bar where Liz and Citri start a drinking contest, but Citri puts a potion in Liz's drink to get her drunk faster. She starts to accuse Citri and they begin to argue, but Citri puts another potion in her drink, saying they should continue their competition. But she's shocked when Cry gives her the drink with the potion, so she also gets drunk and starts asking Cry if he only uses her for her money, mentioning he owes her over 1 billion gil, so she tells him he can pay it back with his body. But as she gets close to him, Liz gets in the way. The Fallen Fog members also arrive at the bar, where they start to cause problems, trying to show off that Arnold is at level 7. He demands to have women and alcohol, so Liz goes up to him and pours a drink on his head, which pisses him off. But she smashes him with the jug and easily defeats all of them. Back at the clan office, Eva notes that even though the Fallen Fog members were also at fault, it's still a problem since Liz attacked them. She thinks that since Arnold has a track record of defeating a Thunder Dragon, they should resolve things peacefully. And Cry notes that a Thunder Dragon would be delicious if it's grilled, saying Citri made it for him once. Eva is surprised, since a Thunder Dragon's body is made of rare and expensive material, so she has never heard of one being sold as food. The Fallen Fog goes to the association, and Chloe thinks they're there to submit a complaint since they got beaten up, but Arnold says that he only needs the name of the girl who attacked them, so Gark tells him it was Liz. He mentions he told Cry to keep her out of trouble, but he must have forgotten, and everyone is shocked when he mentions that Cry is at level 8. He tells them they shouldn't worry since Cry isn't the type who's a bully, so he tells them they'll be fine if they don't cause any more trouble. But it seems to only make Arnold angrier. Meanwhile, Ava is shocked after learning how much money Cry owes Citri, and he mentions she gave him 3 suggestions to pay off the debt. The first way was to throw her in prison so she defaults on her debt, but he tells her it isn't an option since she hasn't done anything wrong. But the second and third suggestions she gives him are to make her his bride or to become her groom, so Cry jokes about how it looks like marriage is the only option. Eva mentions he can pay her back with his income from the Griever, or if he needs to pay her quickly, he can go to a treasure vault on his own, but he's too scared to do that. She mentions she will make a repayment plan for him, so she tells him not to increase his debt any further. The Fallen Fog goes around the city trying to get information about Cry, but all they hear are rumors, and when they tell Arnold how Cry doesn't even go to the vaults, it makes him think it's because he hasn't met anyone with abilities that are on his level. They mention no one has ever even seen Cry fight, so Arnold thinks he must be the strategist type who only reached level 8 because of his friends, which means Cry won't be any match for him because he reached level 7 through his own power. Tino meets with Cry and asks him if he needs anything, saying she'll do whatever he needs, but she becomes sad when he asks her for money. She notes that she also needs money for buying supplies and maintaining her equipment, so there's a limit to how much he can borrow from her, but she can't believe it when he tells her how much he owes. He mentions Citri was the one who lent him the money, and she loses her mind when he notes that if he can't pay her back, he will just marry her. As they go to eat sweets, Tino mentions they can go to a vault and find relics, saying that the auction is taking place in the city, so the relics will sell at a high price. She thinks he can find a vault with valuable relics, but he notes that if he had such an ability, he wouldn't have needed to borrow money from Citri. They run into the Fallen Fog, who prepare to attack him, but Cry mentions that he understands how they feel, since Liz attacked them unexpectedly, so he apologizes on her behalf and even offers to kneel. He shuts Tino's mouth, saying he's on a date with her, and he didn't even bring his weapon, so they should fight another time because they won't be satisfied by beating him when he isn't serious. but Tino tells them that Cry is just worried he'll beat them too badly, which will make them lose confidence. Cry tries to calm her down, but she keeps provoking them, so seeing that he has no other choice, he starts gathering a crowd around them, but they have no idea what he's planning, and we learn he was actually looking for other clan members to help him, but he had no luck. Arnold mentions that the rumors about him being mysterious are true, and he says that Cry only got to level 8 because of his friends, which makes Tino angry. Arnold likes the look in her eyes, and he thinks she'll become strong in the future, but the Fallen Fog members tell her that she's no match for Arnold. She asks for Cry's permission to fight, and everyone is shocked when he doesn't stop her. Tino starts attacking Arnold, but he easily blocks all of her attacks. Cry keeps looking around for other clan members, but the Fallen Fog tells him to pay attention to the fight since Tino is fighting for him, so he starts to cheer for her, which annoys Arnold, and Tino lands a kick, but it does nothing, and Arnold smashes her head into the ground, angry that Cry sent an inferior opponent to fight him. Cry realizes he has no other choice, so he decides to use his pendant, which has Lucia's magic stored inside. He uses a high-level gravity magic to defeat the Fallen Fog, but Tino also accidentally gets hit by it. He tells Arnold that if he still wants to fight him, he needs to first defeat the 3 main parties of his clan to challenge him again. After that, Tino apologizes to Cry since she couldn't meet his expectations, but he notes that it's his fault since he misread the situation. She still wants to redeem herself, so she asks him to tell her where the treasure vaults with valuable relics are, and she swears to work hard to repay his debt. Meanwhile, Liz trains with a golem made by Citri, but she's disappointed since it's just a replica, telling Citri to bring her the original one, but she mentions it's with the investigation bureau. She tells Liz about how Tino fought with Arnold, and she thinks it must have been a hard fight for her. Citri mentions how Cry helped her in the end, and she wonders if they should take care of the Fallen Fog, but Liz thinks they should leave them alone unless Cry orders them. Cry meets with Chloe, saying he doesn't understand why Arnold and the others are mad at him, so she notes it's because, even though Arnold is a level 7 hunter, Cry still forgets about his existence. She asks him what his first impression of Arnold was, so he mentions he must like women with large chests since he wasn't interested in Liz. We see that Chloe once tried to join the First Steps, but she's easily defeated by Luke and fails the exam, so she gave up on being a hunter and became a receptionist for the association. She asks Cry why she failed her test 3 years ago because he told her she had potential, so she wonders what she was lacking. He tells her she should already know, mentioning she could pass in her current position, but he thinks that she shouldn't, saying she has already found her place as a member of the association. After he leaves, he remembers the reason she didn't pass the test 3 years ago, and it was actually just because she was too young at the time, and he knows that if he took her now, Gark would beat him up. Chloe wonders if Cry not giving her a direct answer is one of his 1,000 trials for her to find it herself. She thinks he believes that just giving her the answer won't benefit her, so she decides to continue thinking about the real answer. Until she understands it, she will continue to fulfill her duty at the association. Arnold is shocked when Chloe tells him what Cry said about him, and the other member tells him to stay calm, saying that Cry is only trying to provoke him. But he can't believe it when she mentions Cry thinks that he only likes women with large chests. Arnold doesn't understand what Cry is trying to achieve by making them fight the 3 parties of his clan, and a member of the Fallen Fog arrives after meeting with the parties, saying they refuse to fight them, which makes Arnold angry. They tell him they shouldn't act rashly, saying there's an auction where they can get new equipment, and they might be able to sell the strange relic that was turned down in the Land of Fog. Meanwhile, Cry and Tino go to a man named Matis to show him a relic that Tino found. He mentions it's an outer relic, saying it's probably an item from a high-level magical tool organization, which gets Cry excited. He is curious about its effect, but Matisse notes that he can't know without activating it, so he needs to hold on to it for a while, saying he's busy with a lot of other appraisal requests since the auction is about to start. Cry wants to see the relics, so while Mathis is busy talking with Tino, he allows Cry to check them out. Mathis tells Tino to take care of her herself, saying she reminds him of his granddaughter, and he mentions she should depend on her friends if something happens. He notes that even Cry can be useful sometimes, and she says that even though Cry is strict, he's a wonderful person, so compared to him, she's nothing. Mathis gets angry and asks Cry what he's teaching her, but Cry is too focused on the relics. He sees a relic called the Reverse Face, which can change the face of its user, but the one he had was destroyed by Liz, so he wants it so he can go outside without any worries. Mathis tells him to go away, saying he has a lot of work to do, but Cry tells him to contact the person who gave him the relic for approval because he wants to deal with them directly. After that, Tino asks Cry how he's going to get the money, and he mentions that the relic isn't sold in stores since it can be used for crimes, so he can't allow such an opportunity to slip by. Tino tells him Citri is almost out of money because she's been putting a lot of it into her research, and her potions are also expensive, which she's been giving out to the mages for free. She mentions that if the relic they got appraised is sold for a lot, all his problems will be solved. But Cry thinks about keeping it for himself if it turns out to be rare. They come across a carriage with a noble crest, and Tino mentions it's the crest of that noble family, but she's confused by what they're doing there since they hate hunters. They see Claire meeting with Ark, who tells him she just wanted to see where Ark spends his time, and she mentions she hates hunters, but she likes Ark since he has dignity. She sees Cry staring at her, so she tells him to stop looking at her, which makes Tino angry, but Cry quickly holds her back. Ark introduces him to Claire, who says that her father has told her about him, but she notes that he seems to be weak, so she can't believe his level is higher than Ark's. She wonders if he bought his status with money, calling him rude, but she doesn't understand why he isn't saying anything to defend himself, so he mentions he tries to be careful with his behavior since he was raised without learning proper manners. After she leaves, Cry asks Ark if he has money, but he refuses to lend him any because he knows Cry must have found another relic. Cry tells him he needs to get it, so Ark asks him about what the relic can do, but when Cry says that he can't tell him, Ark tells him he can't help him. Cry starts to ask everyone to lend him money, and a rumor spreads throughout the city that he's looking to buy a powerful relic at the auction. After seeing he has no other choice, he goes back to Citri and apologizes for asking her for more money, even though he told her he was going to pay back his debt. She notes that this is how their relationship has always been, and she says that her research will be delayed a bit, but she managed to get money by selling spare materials. She notes that since he really needs the relic, she will put her needs to the side, and she even offers to go to the bank for a loan if the money isn't enough. Cry hopes that the relic's owner doesn't demand too much for it, but he's shocked when he sees that the relic belongs to the Fallen Fog. Arnold's companion tells them it's a rare relic they brought from the land of fog, so they aren't going to sell it for cheap, but Citri tells them it's creepy looking. Arnold's companion says they will just put it for auction, but Citri mentions that the nobles don't buy relics that aren't impressive looking, so it won't be sold for a high price. Arnold mentions that they don't even know what the relic's effect is, so they can't put a price on it, but he thinks Cry must know what it can do since he's willing to buy it. Cry refuses to tell him anything, but he notes the relic is dangerous, which is why it's been restricted by law, so he tells them it's better if they just let it go. So Arnold wonders why he would want it. Arnold starts to wonder if Cry is luring them into a trap, and he thinks the relic might really be a dangerous item, so Cry is just trying to get them to keep it. He decides to sell it for 10 million guild because he knows it's of no use to them since they don't know how to use it, and falling into Cry's trap by holding on to it would be the worst scenario, which is why he suggested a price they couldn't refuse. He thinks he has won the negotiation, but Cry asks Citri if it's okay for it to be so cheap. But she notes that they were the ones who suggested the price. As they are about to buy it, other hunters start to offer more money for it, and Claire offers 100 million to buy it. After that, Ava tells Cry that everyone thinks it's the strongest relic in the world since he was asking for loans to buy it. But Cry mentions its only use is to avoid being recognized. She tells him to stop increasing his debt, but Citri arrives with 800 million guild, which she reveals she was saving for their wedding. But Eva gets angry at her for enabling Cry, so they end up arguing. After that, Cry and Citri go to meet Claire to discuss the relic, and she admires his attitude for coming forward so openly, saying his nerves seem to rival even Ark, but he says the only thing he has that surpasses Ark is his level. He mentions there are talks of him being Ark's rival, but he notes they aren't even on the same level, and he considers Ark his friend. She thinks he's making fun of Ark, so she takes out her sword, saying Cry must have gathered a lot of relics to reach level 8, which means his strength is fake, and she decides to win the relic and give it to Arc to help him become the strongest. But Cry tells her that Arc wouldn't be happy with it because a relic isn't what makes a person strong. Claire starts to cry, saying she will get the relic no matter what, but Citri tells her that even though she's from the Gladys family, she doesn't have an unlimited amount of money. Citri knows that Claire only has 100 million, and she reveals that their budget is 200 million, so she should just back off. But she tells Claire if she can get more than 200 million, then they will admit defeat. Claire tells her father the situation, and he says they can't retreat because it will tarnish their family's name. So he asks his advisor named Monter how much they can spend, and he notes they can take 500 million from their family savings along with a 500 million loan from a company, but it will have a high interest. Claire mentions Cry's budget is only 200 million, so they only need more than that. But Monter tells her how no competitor would reveal their real budget, and Gladys tells her to win no matter what. We learn Citri has a budget of 950 million, but she isn't sure they can win. Cry tells her she has done enough, and Luz offers to steal the relic if they lose. But Citri tells her it's a bad idea since Cry would be the prime suspect. They arrive at the auction and they meet up with Tino and the others. Cry realizes everyone is wondering about the ultimate relic that he's after, so he asks Tino to bid for him in his place. The auction begins, and as the relics are sold, Liz wonders when the mask will come out, but Cry tells her it's the last item since there's a lot of interest around it, and Cry is disappointed he can't bid on the other items, or else he might not have enough money for the mask. A sword comes out next, and Tina looks to Cry for a signal, which makes him struggle to control his addiction, but he suddenly remembers he has a trump card. He reminds himself that it's only for an emergency, but as the next items come out, he starts losing it. He's about to make a bid, but he thinks about what Citri would think of him. He realizes she would just forgive him, so he prepares to go all out, but the next item is the Akashic Golem. He realizes Citri wants it, but she tells him not to worry because they won't have enough money for the mask if they try to buy the golem. She tells him it's not important, but Cry can see how much it means to her, so he decides to win it for her. The bid reaches 300 million, so Citri starts to worry, but Cry thinks about how it's all really just her money. The bid reaches 500 million, but Cry keeps bidding, and he offers his entire budget of 950 million, but he still gets outbid. The golem ends up selling for 1.6 billion, and we see that Cry wanted it thanks to his trump card, which we learn was a check from Lucia. And he wonders if it was okay for him to use up all of his sister's savings. He talks to Tino after winning, and Gilbert wonders what he will do about the mask, but he tells them he already achieved his goal. He decides to head back early, and the auction for the mask begins. But he remembers Claire saying she would give it to Arc, so he realizes how he can still get it. He meets with Arc the next day, and he tells him to go and see Claire, telling him that the relic she won is dangerous. Arc's companion thinks Cry is being too vague, but Arc asks if he will need his weapon, and Cry tells him it would be best not to bring it. We see Claire feeling depressed, and we see her telling her father she won the auction. But Monter notes how Cry left early. They realize how much money he had, so they think he just let them win. She gets creeped out looking at the mask, and she thinks she's a loser, but it suddenly asks her if she wants power. It starts to float, calling her fitting to use its power, and it suddenly possesses her. Meanwhile, Arc meets with her father, and he tells him how Claire locked herself in her room. There's suddenly a crash, so they rush over to check it out, and they find Claire with the mask as she throws a guard away. Arc asks her what happened, so she tells him she won the strongest relic for him, so he thanks her and asks her to take it off to give it to him. But she sees he has his sword, and Arc remembers Cry's warning about bringing his weapon. Claire starts to lose it, so Arc orders his party to prepare to fight, but warns them not to harm Claire. She refuses to lose to anyone, and she charges at Arc with a sword. Meanwhile, the Fallen Fog are happy they were able to sell the mask for 200 million, but they find Liz and Citri waiting for them. They tell them the profit they earned was all a part of Cry's plan, so they ask for a cut of the money. Arnold's companion thinks it's ridiculous, but Citri tells them she will sell them the antidote for 110 million. She asks them if they noticed their drinks tasted funny, and they all suddenly feel sick. So Arnold realizes he has no other choice. Back at the clan office, Cry holds a party to thank Arc, and he gives Cry the mask. Cry is excited to put the reverse face on, and Claire thanks him for sending Arc. Ark warns him it's dangerous, but he instantly puts it on. It grabs onto his face and evaluates him, but finds all his stats are too low, and he has no motivation, so he's not fit to use it, and it removes itself. Cry realizes it's not the reverse face, but thinks it's rare since it can talk. Claire decides to just give it to him. Liz and Citri return with the money, and they all enjoy the party. Cry thinks about how Claire was able to activate the mask, so he gets depressed, realizing that he must be even weaker than her. But to all Leaf Village ninjas, that is it for today. Recap, do not forget to join our clan, our army, my friend. You can do that by clicking that red button below the video, destroy it for me with that bell. To follow us on YouTube with many videos to come in the following days. So see you later, bro. Peace out.